Welcome back to the Microsoft DP-600 Practice Question Series. Implementing Analytic Solutions using Microsoft Fabric. This is Episode 8, continuing with Warehouse and T-SQL Part 2. Over the next 13 questions, we'll cover T-SQL querying, table design and cloning, loading slowly changing dimensions, warehouse security, and performance troubleshooting. Each question gives you 10 seconds. Let's begin. Question 1 of 13. DW1 contains a table. DIM Customer. You need to identify duplicate email addresses in DIM Customer, returning a maximum of 1,000 records. Arrange the 4 T-SQL clauses in the correct order. Arrange the 4 items in the correct order. Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here is the correct order shown on screen. A T-SQL query is written and evaluated in the order select from group by having top 1000, caps the output at 1000 rows, grouping by email address collapses identical addresses, and having count star greater than 1 keeps only the addresses that appear more than once. The duplicates. Having, not where, is required because the filter is on an aggregate. Question 2 of 13. You add a price range column to DBO.product using a case expression on unit price. 0 to not for resale, under $50 to under $50, $50 to under $250 to under $250, otherwise to $250 plus. Order the case branches correctly. Arrange the 4 items in the correct order. Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here is the correct order shown on screen. Case evaluates its when branches top down and stops at the first match, so the most specific condition must come first. Testing equals 0. First prevents a 0 price from being caught by recent less than 50. Then less than 50, then the 50 to 250 band, and else handles everything 250 and above. Reordering these, for example, less than 50 before equals 0, would misclassify rows. Question 3 of 13. Warehouse 1 has a table, DBO.taxi trips, company, passenger count, trip distance. You need a query that returns the top 3 taxi companies by total miles traveled. Complete the query. Review the query and options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct selections shown on screen. You must group by the base column, company, not the select alias, taxi company, because grouping happens before the alias exists. To rank by total miles, you order by the aggregate sum, trip distance descending, and fetch next 3 rows only returns just the top 3. Question 4 of 13. Sales.orders has columns including weight, quantity, list price, and sale price. Charged quantity should be the first non-null of weight, quantity, or 1. Order price should be the lower of list price and sale price. Complete the query. Review the query and options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct selections shown on screen. COALESCE returns the first non-null value in its list, so COALESCE, weight, quantity 1, falls back to quantity, and then 1. LEAST returns the smallest of its arguments on each row, giving the lower of list price and sale price. MIN is an aggregate. It works across rows, not within one, so it can't produce a per row value here. Question 5 of 13. Sales.products has list price, wholesale price, and agent price. Highest selling price should be the largest of the 3. Trade price should be the first non-null of the 3. Complete the query. Review the query and options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct selections shown on screen. Greatest returns the largest of its arguments on each row, the highest of the three prices, while max is an aggregate across rows and won't work per row. COALESCE returns the first non-null value, giving the first available trade price. Greatest and least are the row-level counterparts to the aggregate max and min. Question 6 of 13. DW1 has sales order detail, modified date, order quantity, product ID, and product ID, name. You need order quantities by year and product, and each result must also include the yearly total across all products. Complete the query. Review the query and options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct selections shown on screen. Year extracts the year from modified date. Grouping sets lets you request exactly two groupings: year, product, for the detail rows, and year for the yearly subtotal across all products, and nothing else. Rollup would additionally add a grand total row, and Cube would add every combination including product-only totals, neither of which was asked for. Question 7 of 13. Lakehouse 1 has DBO.sales, order date, quantity, unit price, and DBO.public holidays, date, country or region. You need the total sales amount per order date for Australian holidays only, where the total sums quantity times price on each row. Complete the statement. Review the query and options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct selections shown on screen. The requirement is to multiply quantity by price on each row and then sum, which is sum open parenthesis s dot quantity times s dot unit price close parenthesis. Sum open parenthesis, quantity close parenthesis, times sum open parenthesis, unit price close parenthesis multiplies two separate totals and gives the wrong number. An inner join to public holidays keeps only dates that are holidays, and the where clause narrows those to Australia. Question 8 of 13. A warehouse has trips. Trip ID, trip distance, date ID, and dim date, date ID is holiday. You need to compare the average miles per trip for holidays versus non-holidays. Complete the statement. Review the query and options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct selections shown on screen. Average miles per trip is total distance divided by the number of trips. Sum open parenthesis t dot trip distance, close parenthesis count, open parenthesis at dot trip ID, close parenthesis. To compute that separately for holidays and non-holidays, you group by d dot is holiday, which produces one row per holiday flag. Order by only sorts, and where would filter rows rather than aggregate them. Question 9 of 13. LH1 has a table sign-in data, person ID, first name, last name, in the DBO schema. You are writing a stored procedure in DW1 that returns the sign-in data with duplicate rows removed. Complete the select. Review the query and options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct selections shown on screen. Select distinct removes duplicate rows across the selected columns, returning each unique person ID, first name last name combination once. Top 100. % returns every row, no deduplication, and all is the default that explicitly keeps duplicates. Question 10 of 13. In a Fabric data factory pipeline, you have a stored procedure in a warehouse that returns the number of active customers and their average sales. You need an activity that executes the procedure and makes its returned values available to downstream activities. Which activity should you add? Review the query and options on screen. You have 10 seconds.
The correct answer is D. The lookup activity executes a query or stored procedure and returns its result set, which downstream activities can reference through the lookup's output, meeting the requirement to reuse the returned values. Copy data moves data between stores, switch branches on a condition, and append variable only adds to an array variable. Question 11 of 13. Workspace 1 contains Warehouse 1 and a user, User 1, who currently has the viewer role. You need User 1 to be able to share Warehouse 1 with other users, following least privilege. Which role should you assign to User 1? Review the query and options on screen. You have 10 seconds. The correct answer is A. The member workspace role grants the reshare capability, so a member can share items such as Warehouse 1 with others, and it is the lowest built-in role that can do so. Viewer and contributor can't reshare, admin grants far more than needed, violating least privilege, and DB owner is a database-level role that doesn't govern Fabric item sharing. Question 12 of 13. DW1 contains tables, employees, and sales. All users have read access to DW1. You must ensure users see only the sales rows for their own region, while everyone keeps unrestricted access to the rest of the data. Which access control fits each table? Match each item to the correct choice. Review the options on screen. You have 10 seconds. Here are the correct matches shown on screen. Row-level security on sales filters the visible rows to each user's own region using a predicate, which is exactly the per-region requirement. Employees needs no restriction, so it stays on the default workspace permissions that already give all users read access. Column-level security hides columns, not rows, so it doesn't meet the regional requirement. Question 13 of 13. You have the following T-SQL statement. Decide yes or no for each of the 3 statements shown. Review the query on screen. You have 10 seconds. The answers are yes, no, no. Statement 1 is yes. The where clause filters only by year, so refunded rows still pass through and their region appears in the grouped output. The case just contributes 0 to their revenue. Statement 2 is no. Transaction date is used in the where filter but is not in the select list, so no transaction date values are returned. Statement 3 is no. The case returns 0 for refunded rows, so refunded sales amount is excluded from total revenue. And that's all 13 questions on Warehouse and T-SQL Part 2. How many did you get right out of 13? Let me know in the comments. Episode 9 moves on to pipelines and data flows. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and please like and share if this helped. See you in Episode 9.